Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Matthew Schreiner podcast. We have previously looked at the SSPX in 2 episodes, and then additionally, I was planning to do an episode on traditionalism and speaking about the variety of conflicting traditionalist opinions and anathematizing of each other. This is still a possible future episode. I wanted to talk about it here because I wanted to show that most Catholics do not live in the extremities of the Church, of either extremely liberal or extremely conservative. That is, the extremes like Father James Martin and Father James Altman, or others. I had a script going, and that was a part of the episode, and I wanted to bring that point up here. Regardless, the topic of this episode is about a debate I saw online about the fact that many Catholics do not believe Catholic theology about issues like contraception, IVF, and so-called same-sex marriage, and others. My mom told me that her morality teacher in her Catholic high school said that, quote, the rules of the church are meant to guide the unguided, end quote. I want to address this issue since I think it relates very well to the topic of this episode. My theology teacher never said that the church's moral precepts were simply guidance. Rather, he said that the church's morality is based upon divine revelation, the magisterium, which is infallible, and the human conscience. The first attitude, which seemingly is incompatible with the Church's view of morality, could seem to say that a well-formed conscience has no need of the Church's morality. However, the Church's morality is meant to guide the formation of a good conscience. The Church's morality is meant to be a way to guide us to heaven. It is not meant to tell us an arbitrary right or wrong, but right or wrong as God views it. The ends of this is that a supposedly properly formed conscience can decide that the Catholic ban against abortion could be overlooked if the conscience decides that it is the best option. Of course, this would have to be because of extremely extenuating circumstances, but regardless, this is the ends. In the end, the point of morality and knowing what is right and wrong should guard us against doing what is wrong because it violates God's law. When deciding actions, we should not necessarily avoid what is wrong. We should do what is right, what is beneficial for the soul, what is beneficial for the spiritual life. This is the attitude we should have, not what should I not do, but what should I do. Sometimes we do have to avoid wrong and temptation, but our efforts should focus on what is spiritually beneficial, what prayers and works should I do, rather than what acts should I avoid. We should work on forming a good conscience, but the Church is not simply another authority that makes rules like the government. Rather, the Church is here to interpret God's law. That is, the Catholic view of ecclesiology, that treats the Church as the highest authority in deciding what is right rather than the individual. Protestant ecclesiology ultimately derives the authority of the Church from the individual. The Catholic Church derives her authority from God himself, as Catholics believe that the Church was founded by God, by Jesus. A Catholic forms a good conscience by knowing what the Church teaches. Conscience is something that guides man to do good, but a conscience should form itself by the Church's teachings. I like this way it was put about the knowledge of Catholic theology among the faithful. The youth of the Church know better stats of sports and names of celebrities than they do the words of prayers or melodies of chants. The problem is people simply are not properly catechized. Most Catholics know that the Church teaches that certain things are wrong. The problem is people don't understand why the Church teaches that these things are wrong, or why they should believe these things are wrong. The problem is also, most Catholics are lukewarm. They don't have much care for the faith. Ultimately, why should we care about what morals a person has if they don't pray? If they don't believe the things the Church teaches? The principal issue of the Church is not that people don't believe what the Church teaches, although that is an issue. Undeniably, the problem is most Catholics are only nominally Catholic. They don't pray. They don't attend Mass. They live in what you might call practical atheism. You can't tell a Catholic who calls himself Catholic from a non-Catholic, one who does not consider themselves a member of the Church, a member of the secular society. I have been listening to, and actually just finished this afternoon, Reclaiming Vatican II, and it looks at this issue, especially in relation to the Paracouncil, who saw Vatican II as a carte blanche to theological liberalism, allowance of contraception, so-called same-sex marriage, and other issues. The problem is also priests' refusal to address these issues from the pulpit. Of course, for Catholics who don't attend Sunday to Sunday, what difference does it make if priests address these issues from the pulpit if they're not there to hear it? The problem, then, is the formation most Catholics receive. They understand what the Church believes, but often not the underlying why. They understand the faith, but they don't have an underlying faith to support their beliefs. That's the problem as I see it. The reason that TLM attendees have a better rate of belief in Catholic doctrine, especially hot-button topics like the ones mentioned, is because they have a devout faith, supported by a reverent liturgy, and priests who have devout faith, who love the faith, and are willing to discuss controversial issues, as well as most TLM attendees attend every Sunday. The same thing is true of other devoutly Catholic places. They have a deep Catholic faith. The church or the faith is the center of their lives. They pray, they go to Mass. And because of this, they believe in what the church teaches. They understand that the church is how God makes himself present in the world. They understand that the church is God's revelation. One problem is the prevailing culture. The problem is that for most, they understand the culture with which they live better than they understand their faith. The problem with this is that what the society teaches becomes what people believe and understand, at the expense of ignoring their faith. This is practical atheism. The problem, then, is that society teaches things contrary to what the church believes, especially regarding issues of so-called same-sex marriage, contraception, and others. Watch on a television show, as Reclaiming Vatican II points out, and you will see they present society as society that is antithetical to Catholic beliefs. People become more familiar with society, especially when these issues are taught in school, or even in Catholic schools. As Father Blake Britton, the author of Reclaiming Vatican II, points out, he knows of Catholic schools that have LGBT flags and other associations in them. If we look at it in context of Reclaiming Vatican II, we see that those who lived following the Council, as I have said before, took it as a carte blanche for any theological liberalism they wanted, which was not the true meaning of the Council, but rather an effect of its spirit, the spirit of Vatican II that led to guitar masses, ugly churches, techie liturgical vestments and vesture, so on and so forth. Techie liturgical music and vesture, so on and so forth. As Father Britton discusses, contraception and sterilization, including by the advice of priests, were considered all right, and bans against them were a bygone age of a pre-enlightened before Vatican II age. For those of you listening, those were in quotes. Yet the Church has always and consistently taught, including in Vatican II, that contraception was wrong. The problem is not that the Church has changed her teachings, rather she has held these beliefs from the beginning. The problem is many of her members, from the clergy to the faithful, have decided that the Church's teachings don't matter, that the spirit of the age, of the pervading culture, is more important than any teaching of the Church, even at the expense of souls. The Church's rules are not arbitrary. Rather, the Church's rules regarding contraception and abortion, for example, are consistent with the Church's beliefs on life. That is, life is a gift from God, and all life matters from contraception to natural death. This is especially true as many places implement euthanasia laws, which, there's another term, assisted suicide. I couldn't think of the proper term, assisted suicide, under the guise of MAID, or medical aid in dying, such as recent laws passed in my home state of Illinois, but already in places like Canada. Calling things end-of-life care or reproductive care seeks to humanize these things, normalize them, and sugarcoat them. Or so-called same-sex marriage goes against the Church's belief of marriage. Put simply, marriage is between a man and a woman. But more than that, marriage is a union of man and woman, created by God from the beginning. We can understand this in terms of Adam and Eve, but also in terms of, in marriage, a man and a woman share in the love of the Trinity. The Church's guidelines are revealed by God, understood and taught by the magisterium, and then received into the conscience of the faithful. They are meant to guide the consciences of the faithful so that the faithful may make good choices, that is, moral choices. The actions of Christians should reflect their Christian life, that they believe in God, that their actions are accounted by Him. Ultimately, the actions of Christians should help to build up the kingdom. Their actions do not just matter for here and now, as if there is nothing to look forward to after. Such is the worldly attitude, the attitude of you only live once, or YOLO, the attitude that one should build up for themselves a great amount of goods and experiences. Rather than that, the Christian attitude is not that these things are unimportant, as this is not a bad attitude to have. It becomes truly a bad attitude only when it justifies sinful acts or harmful acts. Ultimately, the attitude of the Church's rules are for the unguided, rather than the Church's rules are meant for all the faithful, not only for savages who know nothing. The Church's rules are not only for the uncivilized, but for all those who consider themselves Christians. They are not guidance for the unguided, but guidance for all, just as the compass is not for the lost, but for all, if you will, with an example. Ultimately, there are a few lessons we should have. First, We must encourage deeper devotion among Catholics, especially if we wish to have them believe in the Catholic morality. This includes, first and foremost, going to Mass, as well as praying daily and going to the sacrament of confession. Above all, the precepts of the Church considered the bare minimum of what the Church should do. Of what a Catholic should do, not what the Church should do. Ultimately, encouraging a love of the faith, especially among priests, who then are able to encourage this in the families and faithful of their church. Above all, I see it as a cycle. Good priests lead to good families, as well as good families lead to good priests. It is an important cycle, and each part is important. And second, a love of the faith must be encouraged, especially among priests. These priests should be willing to discuss controversial issues and stand for what the Church teaches, be it from the pulpit or when advising a person. Above all, it is striking to see that a majority of Catholics do not believe in what the Church teaches, but it is not surprising. As was pointed out additionally in Reclaiming Vatican II, almost 30% of marriages end in divorce. And while the Church teaches against divorce, and not just the Church, but Jesus Christ, many in the Church are divorced. To clarify a few things, the Church does allow for separation in cases of abuse, for example, but not for divorce. One time I was asked, why does the Church not allow for divorce? For a person to find the one they love. I will answer the question here, at least briefly, that this goes against the Church's belief of love and marriage, which is a good song. Marriage is not finding the one you love, but the one who God has chosen for you. This is not some kind of arranged marriage, but rather when two people are married, this is a covenant that is between God, that cannot be ended by mere human means. Romance and love, if I can read, are not foreign to God's plans of marriage, but they do not mean its end either. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and there will be more exploration into such issues in later time. But I hope this quick and short look was good. God bless, and see you next time. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Doing so helps us to spread this Catholic and Christian message to all. Please also consider supporting this channel on Patreon. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Matthew Schreiner podcast. We have previously looked at the SSPX in 2 episodes, and then additionally I was planning to do an episode on traditionalism and speaking about the variety of conflicting traditionalist opinions and anathematizing of each other. This is still a possible future episode. I wanted to talk about it here because I wanted to share that most Catholics do not believe in the extremities of the Church of extremely liberal or extremely conservative. Sorry.